Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome back to Every Version Ever. Today I'm joined by Eli and Jenna and we're talking about an obscure animated special from 1970. Tales of Washington Irving is an adaptation of Washington Irving's two most famous stories, and conveniently the two stories we're currently focusing on for Every Version Ever, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. I asked Eli and Jenna to join me for this one as they're both big fans of obscure animation, but this one was so obscure they'd both never heard of it or the production company that made it, so it was kind of fun to go down a mini rabbit hole to find out a bit about where this came from. So I guess before we begin, how familiar are you guys with either The Legend of Sleepy Hollow or Rip Van Winkle?
I went to the School of Disney, and that's all I know. Everything in the Disney version.
Hmm.
And I know almost nothing about Rip Van Winkle before this.
Okay.
Pretty much the same. I also went to the School of Disney. I know the it's from the Disney film and a few other things. That one's pretty popular. But Rip Van Winkle, I never seen any adaptations of that before. All I know about the Rip Van Winkle is a guy who falls asleep, and that's all I know. Like,
Okay.
To be honest, I can kind of see why it hasn't been adapted that much. It seems like kind of it might be a difficult story to adapt.
It's also pretty
yeah,
short too.
Yeah, there's not that much that happens. Guy takes a long nap.
That's
yeah.
kind of it. There's a slight bit more than what's in this short, but that's the gist of it.
Mm.
My main familiarity with these two stories is they were both adapted by the PBS show Wishbone,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
and I was obsessed with Wishbone as a kid. So I was very familiar with these stories because of that.
I've only seen a couple Wishbone episodes, but not the Sleepy Hollow, not the All Washington Irving ones.
Yeah.
Trying to remember. I think I saw the Phantom of the Opera one.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good one.
I feel like I saw another one.
Wasn't there a Wishbone episode where he did like Pride and Prejudice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, I need to watch that.
He did a lot of things.
I just find it hilarious with the dog as the romantic lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually doing the Washington Irving stories of Wishbone for a podcast too.
Nice.
So since those were my main things that I was familiar with, I was like, well, I gotta do Wishbone.
Well, there is a dog in these, but they're more side characters.
Yeah, and they weren't characters in the Wishbone versions.
Uh,
Yeah, you can't have competition.
No.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the Disney version I maybe watched once as a kid, so I was not familiar with it until I did that for the podcast a few years ago for the Disney series. So my main, I guess, introduction, my main familiarity with these stories has been the Wishbone versions. And then I guess just because of popular culture, I know these characters. But it's been interesting getting into the different versions and seeing how they do them and then actually reading the book for the first time or stories. So it's interesting what parts they pick and choose to use. And because they're both pretty short, for the most part, a lot of the ones that I've watched so far have been faithful enough. They usually add things. And
To make it
these,
longer.
yeah, kind of. These added a few things, but I think for the most part, they're pretty accurate.
I mean, it seemed pretty. At least, I don't know about Rip Van Winkle, but the Legend of Sleep Hollow one seemed pretty on the course from what I know of the story.
Hmm.
I kind of think if there's anything that surprised me.
Yeah, there wasn't anything too egregiously different. I'll point out the few differences that I noticed when we get to them.
Okay.
Before we get into the stories, though, I was going to ask if you guys are familiar with the production company that did these, API Air Programs International.
Air programs. What?
That's what it's called, Air Programs International. This is
Um,
an animation company that I'd never heard of. I feel like I've heard of API.
I feel like I've seen their style before, but I have not. I'm not familiar with them.
For a while, they actually did a bunch of stuff. They had a series called Famous Classic Tales. I think this was the first episode of that. They just made a bunch of like TV specials for a bunch of classic stories.
Did they do a Phantom? Because I feel like it kind of looks familiar.
Let me pull up the list here. I don't see Phantom of the Opera.
Okay, I'm not sure where I've seen them before.
Well, there are a bunch of, for lack of a better term, cheap animation production companies that do
Mhm.
these kinds of things. So it is possible. Like
I
this,
mean, I guess it was probably the style at the time.
yeah, kind of, because this is kind of a cheaper stylized animation that you can tell it wasn't like the backgrounds are detailed, but like the animation itself is very simple. There's nothing
Yeah.
too complicated that's going to drive up the budget.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst animation ever, but it also wasn't the best.
Yeah, that's
That,
kind of how I felt.
that's a common description for a lot of American animation in the 70s.
Yeah. I feel like they were all trying to copy like Hanna-Barbera, but not really doing it well.
Well, technically, this is kind of an offshoot of Hanna-Barbera because this was the
Um,
Australian division of Hanna-Barbera.
okay, well that
Uh,
explains everything. So it's just I probably feel like I've seen this style before because it's just a Hanna-Barbera copycat.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this, like, I don't know if Air Programs International was like acquired by Hanna-Barbera or if Hanna-Barbera just decided to start something in Australia and that's how this came about. I don't really know enough about them. There's not a whole lot of information that I can find. Like, Air Programs International is not clickable on Wikipedia, so it's hard to know much about this offshoot of Hanna-Barbera.
Sorry, just a tangent. You know, like Lost Media. You ever think about lost history about like these kind of studios? So like, what happened? What's the reason for this and that, and why? And that we'll probably never know.
do you know where this originally aired, Jonathan?
I think in the US.
Okay, it's not like an Australian thing.
I think it was made in Australia, but I think it was made for a US audience.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking of like I know Australia animated Alice Through the Looking Glass from the 80s, and that was also meant for an American audience.
Hmm.
I guess that's just how they did animation at the time. It wasn't really meant for Australia.
Yeah, no, yeah, they outsource a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is that maybe where you would have seen a Phantom of the Opera? Would that series? I'm trying to think of the name of that studio because they've done other things that have come across my radar before.
No idea.
I haven't really gotten to them yet. There was a version of The Wind in the Willows that I noticed, but I didn't do that this year. So they've done a bunch of things. I can't remember what the name of that studio is.
Oh, the one that did Alice Burbank.
Oh, yes, Burbank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burbank Films, Australia. They did two Alices actually, one after the other, but that's a tangent. I don't know. They probably don't have any relation to this studio.
I don't think so.
But then I don't, maybe some of the animators went from this to that. How much animation was there in Australia at the time? I don't know.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I have no idea.
Look, I'm still on the Famous Classic Tales Wikipedia page. They have a bit down at the bottom here. It says that Air Programs International was acquired by Hanna-Barbera in 1972. So it
Okay,
existed before Hanna-Barbera and they acquired them.
Okay.
So
got it.
I guess this was made before Hanna-Barbera got them.
Oh,
The series,
okay.
this particular episode was, but the series continued. So I guess Hanna-Barbera probably owns this, but it was made before Hanna-Barbera got them, and then they kept making more installments of this series after, because this
What was the
series ran
year?
through 84.
Okay.
The year of this one was 1970.
All right.
They were acquired in 1972, and they made about, looks like roughly two specials a year until 1984.
Okay.
Okay, I was wondering how long these things lasted because I've never heard of the production company that made these. So I imagined that they probably weren't that successful, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I
Sounds
don't
like they
know. Like,
lasted for a while then, though.
yeah, it's probably one of those things where it might have gotten enough of a viewership on TV that they decided it was worth it to keep making them. But I don't know how successful it would have been outside of that.
I think a lot of these things, part of it is also like they sell them for schools after.
Oh yeah.
That also might be part of it.
Yeah, I heard of that happening before.
Yeah.
It looks like that several of them were put out on VHS by a bunch of different companies, including Good Times, who made their own cheap versions of stories.
Good times. Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like that also a few made it to DVD, it says. including a 2007 release titled Hanna-Barbera Storybook Favorites.
Hmm.
And everything was released is now out of print. So that was probably the last release.
But I wouldn't be surprised if before the VHS tapes, they were probably doing like reels. They were probably selling reels. That's my guess.
It could have been, yeah. Because I could see this as being like a special thing shown in schools because it is a fairly decent adaptation of classic literature.
And no hate to you, Jonathan, but my gosh, this was a rough video to watch. um, I feel kind of sorry. It's like, oh, I've been spoiled for Alice. Like I forgot how difficult it is to watch rare things sometimes. And this one, like this, it felt like this video had some weird stabilization issues, like with
I
the software
wondered
program.
about that.
Yeah,
But
it made it really difficult to watch for me.
part of me wondered if it was a purposeful animation choice or if maybe it was a software thing. I don't know.
It seemed like a software thing to me. Like it didn't know. So basically, you put something in a software, you tell it to stabilize. But it's, if it's really junky already, it's going to be kind of difficult to handle.
Yeah.
But, I'm no expert. That's just my own, experiences with it tangentially secondhand, I guess. Because I've only had people do it for me. But anyway, I mean, it's better than like not being able to see it.
Yeah.
But
Part
I
of
hope
me,
that somebody puts up a good version one day. That'd be nice.
I was just going to say, part of me wishes that there would be a good version of this out there, but also I didn't care enough to really want a good version. Like this is fine. It's interesting to me as someone just wanting to watch a bunch of different versions of things. But like if I was going to sit down and watch a movie of either of these stories, this wouldn't be my first choice.
My heart just breaks a little bit, I guess, for media that's not preserved digitally.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always my dream project that I would never do because I'm lazy, but it would be like an alliance of people like preserving adaptations of different stories for this kind of thing. It doesn't deserve it, but it should be preserved.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the hardest thing about like getting people to like preserve like lost films is like the fact that a lot of the ones that are in the worst quality are the least popular and the most obscure, and it's hard to get people to care about saving those ones, even though they should,
Yeah.
because they all deserve to be saved. But yeah, that's
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it's so much harder to do that. I've just been very fortunate, I think, with Alice because a lot of people do care. But like, I have to imagine if there's a Washington Irving committee, I have to imagine a lot of people don't care about this kind of thing.
Probably not. And now that you're talking about Alice, yeah, because I've noticed like doing Alice, I didn't have too much trouble finding most versions that I wanted to cover, and most versions were semi-decent to watch. Like there's not really any that are like painfully deteriorated to the point of looking awful. So
I mean, I will have to say, like, Curious Your Archive and I did pave the way a bit, but yeah, but there are a few Alices that definitely had this treatment before we got our hands on them. But yeah, but I'm spoiled because we were able to do stuff like that. I noticed Mel Blanc, or I forgot to say his name. He's credited in this.
Yes, he did a bunch of voices.
Yeah, there was this one guy that sounded like Yosemite Sam, and I was like,
that was my immediate thought.
Yeah, and I was like, and then I saw his name in the credits, like,
Yeah,
that's him.
He was also Brahms' dog. He was the lead dwarf. The mayor guy. He apparently was Baby Rip. He did a baby voice.
Okay.
He did a whole bunch of stuff throughout the whole special.
Yeah, well, I didn't recognize the other one so much. It was the mayor sounded the closest to Yosemite Sam.
Yeah, when the dwarf started talking, I immediately recognized it as Mel Blanc.
Well, now that you said it, I could be like, oh yeah, I could hear that.
Yeah, I recognize every once in a while. I recognize these voice actors. I think Das Butler was in this. If I'm like, I get him and Don Messick sort of mixed up. I know one of them is in this because I noticed that. Yes, I recognize their voice because I hear them. I'm so used to hearing them in the Hanna-Barbera stuff all the time.
There was a bunch of people that were like Hanna-Barbera staples. Nancy Weibel, Don Messick, Julie McWhirter, and Lenny Weinrib. They all did voices. There were other voices too. Some I recognized, some I didn't. The narrator was Ken Sampson, who I didn't realize he was the voice of Rabbit in
Yes,
Winnie the Pooh stuff for decades.
Wait,
yes, yeah,
Disney?
Yeah,
Oh,
he was the narrator of this.
I didn't recognize them. I was just so focused on the story, you know.
yeah. I didn't recognize them either, but I did recognize the name Ken Sansom because I recognized, oh, that's Rabbit.
Yeah, I didn't realize that that's who that was until I looked him up, and I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And I don't have his name memorized.
Yeah, I know. We're just animation nerds. Like, don't feel bad.
Yeah. Anyway, so a lot of voice talent on this one, actually.
The other one that stood out to me was Joan Gerber, who was Dame Van Winkle. She was another prolific voice actress, but she was Mrs. Beakley in the old DuckTales series.
Ah, I was like, she
Oh,
sounded familiar.
yeah.
That would be why for
Yeah,
me anyway.
okay, that makes sense.
Yes. Now that I didn't know that, but now that you say that, yeah, they do sound the same.
Yeah, I could hear it now.
And then the other voices of note were not because I recognized them or anything. It was purely because I just decided to go to their IMDb page. Lorraine Zacks, it just says voice, so I don't know who she was. She might have been one of the kids. I don't know. She was apparently married to Mel Blanc's son, so I'm wondering if there was a bit of nepotism here because this was her only role in anything.
Ah,
Is the only thing she ever did.
100%.
And then Brian Zacks, who was her younger brother.
that's interesting. You know what's interesting about that is that like Mel Blanc had a son and who like Mel Blanc wanted his son to take over and be like a voice actor too, and Mel Blanc's son, who I can't remember the name of, he
Probably Noel. That's who Lorraine was
Noel.
married to.
Yes, that's right. Noel Blanc. Noel Blanc did not really want to be a voice actor, sadly. And so I have a feeling, oh, maybe they were just like, hey, you wanna act for a cartoon? And they were like, sure, and they didn't really feel any passion about it, and they didn't continue.
Yeah,
So we actually talk about the special now.
sure.
Let's see my notes. The very first thing I noted though was it starts off with intense music like right away.
Oh
I
yeah.
noticed
Yeah.
that too.
And I was just like, well, hold up. I can't start like this right away. You need to build up to it. You haven't deserved this yet. It's like I kind of get it. They can't like they probably couldn't commission like a whole masterpiece of composition, but I was kind of like, you haven't deserved this intense music yet. You need to step back.
I noticed a bunch
Yeah.
of comments, like, because I was trying to find better versions of this. So I saw comments all over the place of people were reminiscing about this special. And a lot of people thought it was really scary. So I'm wondering if a lot of that was because of the intense music.
I wouldn't be surprised. It kind of has a vibe right away.
Yeah.
Um, I think for a kid, it could probably work for a kid. I think
Hmm.
as an adult, I feel like I value a bit more of pacing and like build up of suspense instead of starting right out the gate with it.
Hmm.
So, but I could see, as a child, if you watch this, it could kind of like, it kind of already catches you already. I could totally see that.
Yeah, because they go have for an eerie vibe right from the beginning, and they're kind of like, and they all introduce like the concept of the headless horseman early, and so it's like throughout the special, it's kind of creepy in a way.
Yeah. And I noticed they did it again with Rip Van Winkle as well.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
tense music right at the start.
Mm.
Yeah. I felt like the beginning of Rip Van Winkle was scarier than Legend of Sleepy Hollow, or creepier at least. And I was like, I know it's technically a ghost story, but it's not really that kind of a ghost story. It felt like they tried to make Rip Van Winkle more intense than it needed to be.
I kind of agree, though. I did wonder part of that was just because I wasn't expecting it or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I don't really think of Rip Van Winkle as that scary of a story, but I don't know.
It's really not. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
get there, but like the dwarves in this, they're not supposed to be dwarves. They're ghosts. So
Hmm.
I don't know why they replaced them with dwarves. That didn't make
Yeah,
sense.
that kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling that just because it was a story by Washington Irving, they thought, oh, like, well, this is the guy who made Sleepy Hollow, so we have to make this a little creepy too, right? And like, I have a feeling it might have been something like that.
Probably. And because this is one special with two stories, they probably tried to make it seem more cohesive by making the music all flow. So it just kept the, I guess, intensity of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow when they moved on to Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah.
Seems like it would make more sense just to do a longer Sleepy Hollow then.
Yeah, I would say so, but I say the same thing about The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. I would have rather had two longer movies than the two half-length shorts that we got in one longer movie.
I mean, those were meant to be longer movies, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And I wish that they had gone with that plan.
Yeah.
I really want longer versions of those. It'll never happen because even if they tried nowadays, it wouldn't be the same.
yeah.
But yeah,
No.
yeah, like trying to make this a scary story, like I didn't find this that intense. And I think part of that is because I don't like Ichabod Crane. There's of all the different versions that I've seen, he's just not a likable character. And that's
Hmm.
kind of by intention. Like if you read the book, he's kind of a contradiction because in parts of the book he's described as kind, but also his goal is he's a gold digger, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wants Katrina's farm. He wants her inheritance, and that's the only reason that he's
Which
going
is
after her.
delusional.
Yeah.
And in this version, it felt like they tried to take that edge off by trying to build something between them, but it did not work the way I think they were trying to make it work. And Katrina seemed to like do a 180. Like she seemed to like him for half the special until he proposed, which I mean, if he's proposing too early, that could make somebody do a 180. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I was kind
Well,
of, well, maybe she was upset because she's like, I thought we were friends. Like, but
that
yeah,
could
I
be.
wrote that. She did 180. Also, she was the one with the most inconsistent animation, so maybe it's tied together.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't really like any of the designs for especially the faces, but her and Ichabod, I didn't like them. Brahm, I guess, is fine, but I don't know. I didn't love the facial designs of the characters.
Yeah, the I didn't like the like animation, and I know like animation, TV animation from the 70s was cheap. I'm well aware of that, but like even for those standards, I felt like this was like really below par in terms of like the character designs and the animation quality.
I think
Hmm.
Katrina had the worst design of them all. She was wearing a lime green dress with, very form fitting, and her neck was thick and constantly changing.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
disorienting.
yeah.
I didn't like her mouth either. Her mouth looked
Yeah.
odd.
I mean, she just wasn't very pretty. It was kind of hard to realize why they were fighting over her.
Yeah.
That's mean, but I mean,
Well, she had land, so
She had land.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and also the thing about like her liking Ichabod Crane at the beginning, like maybe compared to Brom Bones, he just looked better because, Brom Bones was not really a great person either.
no, and it's in the book, it's more like she's sort of purposely pitting them against each other.
Yeah. That's the
So
impression I got from the Disney version too, right?
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's supposed to be that she really likes him. So it felt weird that they were trying to make it seem like they were actually a couple. And then she did a 180 at the end and started laughing at him and didn't want anything to do with him. So
Yeah, that
it
was
was
weird.
strange.
I remember when they were being friendly, and I was like, "Oh, am I misunderstanding the story here? Okay, I guess maybe is this how it is in the book? They're
No,
friends." Like,
no.
yeah, okay, that makes more sense.
That's one of the biggest changes was that they seemed to like actually want them to be a couple for a while. And then they decided that they needed to stick to the book at the end. So then it made it seem like she was just very inconsistent.
That's what I think it is. It's just poor. Like happens a lot with adaptations. Like the books make sense, but when you try to adapt it into a film or a TV thing, it's like they try to mold it into something that the book wasn't. Like, oh, this let's try to make this more appealing by making them like more romantic towards each other because like everybody loves a love story, but like it doesn't work because you're trying to adapt a story that wasn't really that.
Hmm.
I also think they were confused about whether Ichabod Crane was like a good guy or a
Yeah.
not great guy.
Well, that's another thing that like they have
Yeah,
trouble with. Like unlikable protagonists is another thing that networks are really afraid of.
Yeah.
yeah, they are.
And to me, reading the book, he is not likable. Like, I know it was weird because, like, I've always had it in my head that he's supposed to be kind of a slimy guy. But the book does describe him in places as kind. But if you're going by his actions, I mean, he's a gold digger. That's the best way to describe him, is he's a gold
Right.
digger.
I think he's meant to be, at least if I've read the book, it was a long time ago, which I think I have actually, really long time ago. So long ago, I don't remember if I have or haven't. But I felt like the book, he's more meant to be a complex character.
Yeah.
He's a great character. He's not good. He's not bad.
Hmm.
He's probably better than Brom, but
Yeah,
Yes.
it's but he's not like a hero.
Hmm.
that makes sense.
But Hollywood doesn't know what to do, or when I say Hollywood, the entertainment
Yeah,
industry, they don't understand what that means in terms of adaptation.
yes,
Especially in kids media.
I would actually say the Disney version is kind of okay. I think he's kind of okay. He is kind of like
The Disney
both.
version is kind of the best version of all the ones that I've seen so far.
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
That
seems to be the closest of all the characters. They kind of nail them.
yeah,
yeah,
because he's not a bad guy, but he's also not great.
Yeah.
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 It's like yeah, that's I'm surprised by that a little bit because Disney, as much as I love Disney, like you would think that that company would try to like sanitize him a
I
little
mean, look
bit.
at Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Pinocchio is a little jerk in the book, and
Yeah,
they were like, "Oh, we can't do this. He needs to be likable." So like, instead, he's just dumb.
they literally thought Pinocchio would not work because he was too unlikable. So like
Hmm.
so
Yeah,
like yeah.
but I mean, that's the whole point of that story is that he's meant to be unlikable, and then you actually root for his demise, but then he actually tries, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
you go on a journey with this character of hating his guts and then
Well,
wanting
see,
him to be redeemed.
Yeah.
The book is fascinating, to be honest.
The book is bizarre. It's so
Yeah,
strange.
but
yeah.
you really do go on a journey with Pinocchio by the end of it, where it's like, okay, I could see what the writer was attempting here.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I feel like Washington Irving is kind of doing a similar, like, unlikable character thing that you can't fully root for, but you're still kind of rooting for, but also not really, like a kind of a great character.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's fascinating that Disney, the company that couldn't adapt a book the way it was meant to be, chose to adapt him correctly for this one. I kind of wonder if it was a full length featured picture, if they would have done the same thing or if they would have tried to fix him too.
Oh, interesting.
That is
Yeah,
a good point. I bet they would try and clean him up a bit for if they were doing a full-length feature with him.
yeah, because I think it works because it's short and you don't have to be with him that long.
Yeah.
But like, a whole hour and a half, I don't know, man.
Well, I actually think that's one of the reasons why I think the Disney version works so well is because like the scene at the end of that when the headless horseman is chasing him through the woods, like that is like one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie because it's really fun and hilarious, like because you're not really rooting for him at that point. At that point, he's a very unlikable character, and so you don't know if the headless horseman is going to get him or if he's going to escape, and you don't really care because it's just all you're focusing on is just the chase.
It's kind of fascinating, isn't it? It's kind of like usually you would think, oh, you want this person to be the hero and you want the audience to root for them.
Yeah.
But no, you're just kind of like, he's an experiment at this point. What happens to him? No, he disappeared,
And he like might have died at the end of that, you could argue.
Yeah. And it's like, oh well,
Yeah,
moving
exactly.
on. You know?
Exactly. He was a gold digger. Like, exactly. He was not a good person.
Yeah. As for how this special adapted him, I really didn't like him in this one though. Like, I don't know. The voice was just
I
unlikable to
hated his
me.
voice.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
even to the beginning when he's trying to sing "Oh God, Our Help in Ages Past," he sounds awful. And I was like, this guy is supposed to be a music teacher.
Yeah, I wrote bad singer or bad audio conversion.
I, I think he was a
like
bad singer.
it might be both.
It could be both. It could be both, but yeah, he was not a good singer though. Yeah. So
Yeah, I was like, I guess technically I've had voice teachers who weren't necessarily good singers because something happened to their voice, but they still
Mm,
had the knowledge. But yeah, I'm not sure what was going on here.
yeah, he sounded terrible.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember if in the book he's a bad singer or not. I know he's a singing instructor, but that's it.
I never got the impression that he was bad. I assumed that he was a good singer, which is why he was also the singing teacher.
I mean, Disney makes
Right.
him a good singer because it's Bing
It's
Crosby,
Big
but
Crosby, right?
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know if he's that good of a singer though, or maybe he would be more appealing to marry for some people.
maybe.
Was,
Um,
was there any character in this special that was likable?
the dog.
The dog.
Oh,
The dog was likable. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
yeah, he just wanted to sing.
Yeah.
He didn't know
Yeah.
that Bloom was using him for badness.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Braun Bones is like pulling the strings. Like the dog didn't do anything wrong.
yeah. Dog just like, yeah, I sing too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
That was another thing that they did for this one that it's not fully true to the book because the book never comes right out and says that Brom Bones is responsible for all the stuff that happens. It heavily implies it, but it never comes right out and says it. And this one just came right out and showed you that Brom is the one, like he trashes the schoolhouse. And then they add some things, like they have him trash the schoolhouse twice, which there was only once in the book, and that was enough to get him to believe that there was witches doing this. And I don't think he ever left a note telling him to stay away from Katrina. So they added that. But then by the end, they kind of like wanted to separate that. They basically say that this version of Ichabod was taken away by the Headless Horseman. Like it doesn't make any attempt to seem like Brahm is behind this at all, because they have Ichabod tell the story of the Headless Horseman at the party instead of somebody else with Brahm. And Brahm does come in and tell his little bit about getting to the bridge and leaving, but then Brahm he says his thing and leaves. But like the whole
Yeah,
point of that scene in the book is Brahm is planting the seeds of this bridge being really important in Ichabod's head because you infer based on his reaction to the story at the end that it was
that he
Brahm
believes him.
being
Mm,
the headless horseman. But
Right.
they don't even
yeah,
attempt that here. They don't come back to this. It's just Brahm tells his story and leaves. And then at the end, they think he's taken by the horseman. There's no implication that maybe it was Brahm Bones. It's kind of just unambiguous that, yeah, he got taken by the horseman. They even have him singing terribly in the woods, his ghost.
yeah. I thought it was weird that Ron wasn't the one to tell the story, and I was like, oh, again, I am I just being misled by the Disney version, and he didn't psych him out. But I guess that is in the book. He did tell the story.
In the book, I think somebody is telling, let me find it. I've got the book here, but I think somebody else is telling the story first. There was an old man, and Ichabod tells the story correctly. Like that's the story that is told to Ichabod in the book about
Mm,
him being chased by the headless horseman. The headless horseman turns into a skeleton, and then there's like a flash of lightning, and he jumps over the treetops. But that story is told to Ichabod at the party, and then Brahm comes in and confirms that that's basically what happens, and he needs to get to the bridge in order to escape.
mm. So seems like to me they were kind of adapting it faithfully, but they didn't want to add another character in, I guess. So they just assigned it to Ichabod. Very strange.
They might have just wanted to simplify it as much as possible for like TV audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Hey, Ichabod, you need to psych yourself out. Thank you. You guys notice any like kind of acronyms in this one? Like the fashion was kind of weird. Like Katrina was dressed like a pilgrim at first,
Oh
and
yeah.
then when she's like rejecting him, she's dressed like a Southern belle and
Sure.
with an '80s Southern belle. I was just kind of like, what's going on here? When does this
Like
take place? But I guess I'm more into historical fashion than other people would be.
well, you're more than me because like I don't ask me whether anything they're wearing is accurate.
There's also a moment where there was like a upright piano, like a standing piano, and I was like, was that a thing back then?
Yeah.
Feel
I
like
don't
I've
know.
seen them in other older movies that are supposed to take place in that time.
Okay.
I feel like that would be more closer to something that someone could have in their home because I mean the Van Tassels are rich, but I can't really see them having even a grand piano in that house. I don't know.
Well, I can't see them having a regular piano. I feel like pianos at that time used to be smaller, or they weren't even pianos. There was something else. I'm not a musical history person, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like there are a couple anachronisms that are pretty common in TV adaptations,
Right.
but I don't know enough about the time period.
Well, I just looked up the history of upright pianos and it says they were quite popular in the later 19th and early 20th centuries. So that's probably accurate.
When does
Right.
this story take place?
Yeah. Does
It
anybody know
was in
when
the
this takes?
1800s.
I know
Oh,
that.
okay. I thought it was like 1700s.
Actually, I'm not
Goes to
sure.
show you.
I'll look it up to make sure, but I think it was in the 1800s.
I might just assume that because of the fashion, which was obviously wrong.
Actually, I assumed it was 1800, but 1700s, like, I mean, they do sort of look 1700s, like
Rip
the
Van
fashion.
Winkle is 1700s, but I was thinking that Sleepy Hollow was 1800s.
Well, even Rip Van Winkle, he goes to the future, and I was like, the fashion is the same.
Well, it's only 20
Uh,
years later, but I'm not familiar enough with that time period to know if it would have changed that much.
It should have been a little bit more drastic than that. Let's just say that.
Okay, Sleepy
right.
Hollow
Yeah.
took place in 1790.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I thought that makes way more sense because I thought this. I feel like this seems like pre-Civil War America, and that was way pre-Civil War. Like,
Yeah.
So maybe the upright piano is an anachronism because this page that I'm looking at says the main design, it looks like, was invented by someone in around the 1800s. So if it's not an anachronism, they were like right on top of the new invention.
Actually,
jeez.
looking it up, if you look up the upright piano, John Isaac Hawkins, an Englishman living in Philadelphia, succeeded in making the first true upright piano in 1800. And the picture of it is very different. It looks like almost like a harpsichord on top of piano keys.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's an anachronism.
So the portrayal of the piano in Sleepy Hollow is inaccurate, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Apparently so.
So
Yeah.
I'm a parent. Yeah, I didn't know that, but apparently I'm right. Um,
Uh, the people who made this are probably shaking their fists in their graves. Like,
how dare they prove me wrong? But it just kind of make me wonder if maybe there was a piano in the book or something, and it was meant to be
oh,
something like that.
I don't
no.
remember if it says what specific music they had at the party or not.
And
Different in different versions, so
I think it's also going to depend on colonial like history and what they would have had to, because not everyone could probably afford having a piano.
Yeah.
I would assume that the Van Tassels could afford whatever the latest thing was, since they're supposed to be the
Oh yeah.
rich family.
They're rich.
Yeah,
They're rich. Like having a piano in the 1700s is like having a TV in the 1940s. It's like luxury. Like only the rich people have.
well, anyway, that was new. I kind of want an old-fashioned upright piano now. They look cool. They look kind of gothic. It's neat.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It was a violin. In the book, it's a violin that they're dancing to. So,
that makes a lot more sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that does make sense. Like every time they get to that dance scene when Ichabod and Katrina are dancing, I always hear a fiddle. It's like it sounds very fiddly, that type of
Yeah.
dance.
Yeah.
Oh, before I forget, looking at my notes, that scene with Mr. Von Tassel with the chair, very strange. I wrote chair dominance.
Oh yeah, the chair. I remember that scene. He was
Yeah,
like,
was
you
that in the book?
I
don't
don't
sit in my
remember that in the book. That was another thing it felt like they might have added to this.
Yeah, that chair also, I believe, is an anachronism, but don't quote me. If I'm wrong, it doesn't matter, but if I'm right, it very much matters.
You know, that felt strange because it seemed pointless, but also there was just it felt like, oh, maybe they just added that just for a comedic bit about, hey, get out of my chair, but it wasn't that funny, so I don't know how much.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't understand the point of this scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, if it was in the book, I don't think they interpreted it very well because it feels pointless.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything with a chair. Yeah, I think they added it to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then another thing I wanted to point out. So Brahm at some point says, "We'll make him look like a fool wherever he goes." And and I wrote, "He doesn't need help." Um,
Yeah. That's accurate.
just let him do Ichabod. He's I mean, he proposed to a wealthy farmer's daughter, just being a schoolmaster, with nothing to bring to the table. He's a fool. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and my other last relevant note is he has to crouch to look in the mirror, or lol, because because he literally, it's the mirror is just like, it's not even like a mirror, it's just a piece of mirror, and he can put it wherever he wants to on the wall, and he puts it where he has to crouch. I was just like,
That,
what is this?
that, that is strange. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it could be due to the fact that he doesn't actually have a home. He lives with the parents of the students. He just goes from house to house.
yeah,
Oh
he does.
yeah.
Yeah, they do say something like that. Though sometimes he stays at the school room. I'm not sure where that was.
The staying
Yeah.
at the schoolhouse, I don't remember that from the book. I think in the book he just had a new place to stay every night. I don't remember him living at the school at all.
Yeah,
Right. But it's accurate that he was like he did not have a consistent place to live.
No, yeah.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. In that case, I retract my statement.
Yeah. Okay. That
Maybe
that
that's very clever storytelling.
that you got to give them credit wherever some cleverness is.
But yeah, and that's all. I don't know if I have anything else to say about that one.
I think we've pretty much covered the whole thing, just not in order.
Yeah. That's not much to say. It's like the overall, I found the Sleepy Hollow segment like it was just like a typical mediocre like story. It wasn't like there's nothing about it. Even discounting the poor animation quality, there was nothing about the storytelling that I thought really stood out that much.
Hmm.
It was okay. I just wrote okay.
Yeah,
It's not better than Disney's,
no.
Nah,
but it's not like the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's better. I don't even know if it's better than the Tim Burton film. Like,
I actually haven't seen a Tim Burton film. I should.
I've seen it a couple times because I'm doing that one for the podcast too. I didn't
Okay.
love it, but I guess I would prefer to watch that one. It's a lot more violent and gory, so
It's interesting that you say I guess, like you're not really sure, which tells me it's not
I
very
mean,
good then.
as a movie, it is better as a movie. For me personally, and what I like in a movie, I don't like things that are kind of gory. And even though it's kind of
Uh,
fake gory, I I didn't love that about it. But like the actors were good, the music was great, the aesthetics were great. So as a movie, it's good. So if you like that kind of thing, I think you'll like it.
is this technically a better adaptation
Oh, this is
than that?
way better as an adaptation. This is.
Oh, interesting.
The Tim Burton one is barely an adaptation.
Tim
They
Burton
took
strikes again.
yes,
yeah,
they took the names of the characters, the idea of the horsemen, and then did their own thing with it.
Tim Burton is notorious for like veering very far from the source material.
In his movie, the Headless Horseman is a real ghost, and it does kill people. So, yeah, it's
Right.
in most versions, because of the way the book ends, it is heavily implied that the ghost is Brahm in disguise, but it
Yeah.
is a real ghost. It kills Brahm. So,
Yeah. They went a whole different direction. Yeah.
yeah, a total different direction.
Now
Yeah.
my question is, was it meant to be like an adaptation before Tim Burton came on, or did
When
it
Tim Burton came
veer
on,
off
it
when
was
he came on?
I don't know their original intent, but I know when he came on, their idea was to make a slasher film, and Tim Burton changed it from a straight-on slasher film to more of a gothic horror Tim Burton-y film.
Oh my God. I
Okay,
think
so he
he.
didn't ruin it. It sounds like he saved it.
It sounds
Kind
like
of,
he
yeah,
did.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. a slasher based on Sleepy Hollow sounds terrible. Like,
I don't know. If you told me a slasher based on Phantom of the Opera would be horrible, I would think it'd be horrible, but actually it was pretty good.
I
Uh,
okay,
I'm
okay.
I'm actually doing a version that kind of could be considered a slasher. It stars Kaylee Cuoco as the
Oh,
Katrina
really?
Van Tassel character. It was made in 2004. It's like CW level acting.
Oh,
It's not that great.
okay. Yeah, no, I'm not surprised at all that something like
my
that.
thoughts are with you.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we move on to Rip Van Winkle?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we've exhausted Sleepy Hollow.
yes.
Yeah. I don't know if I could say I like this, either one better than the other in this case, which story was better.
I think
Nah,
I
nah.
enjoyed watching Rip Van Winkle more, but probably because I have seen a lot fewer versions of Rip Van Winkle at this point. I've done a whole lot more Sleepy Hollow. So it was more interesting to me to get a semi-fresh story.
You know what? I liked Rip Van Winkle more because the voice actor for Rip wasn't as annoying.
Ah,
Mm, So
yes.
But what did you think of the design of Rip Van Winkle?
he looks the same.
That's what I said. It's
Yeah,
like, do they just reuse the Ichabod character?
So
yeah.
what do you think, Eli? Was it better than Sleepy Hollow or was it worse?
I kind of like agreed with you when you said that they were both kind of like not memorable, but I also kind of agreed with Jonathan because I don't know a lot about the Rip Van Winkle story, and I think this was like the first time I've ever seen it, so it was sort of interesting in that way. But like,
Same.
if I'm gonna judge it based on its writing quality and animation quality, it's exactly the same as Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I like part of me is like I like the Rip Van Winkle more because better voice actor, so that and but also I wasn't used to it, so I guess it was more refreshing.
Hmm.
But I couldn't say it was like actually better or worse. And I think it's only refreshing because there's not a lot of adaptations of it to begin with. So
Yeah,
yeah,
honestly, like as someone who doesn't know a lot about the Rip Van Winkle story and who just watched it now for the first time, I'm not a huge fan of it. It's not like okay, so this is a story about a guy who like what is it? He drinks something and then he like falls asleep for
sleeps
20
until
years.
his wife dies. Like, great.
And then, yeah, I felt like that's exactly what I thought of. That's
This
what I
is
was
a
talking about.
story for the modern age.
It feels super grim and like kind of sad, and I'm trying to figure out
I have,
why this is like not a fun story. It's like and it's
yeah,
like
I felt it was awful. But at the same time, doesn't Rip Van Winkle kind of win in
Kind
this?
of.
He
kind of
doesn't want to do anything, and he doesn't like his wife, so he gets to take a long nap and never have to talk to his wife ever again. And I'm like, he wins.
I mean actually well his wife was not like an angel or anything. So that is kind
I mean, I could kind of get why she was annoyed with him though, because it
yeah.
sounds like he sounds like you ever meet those people, and you see this in all genders and walks in life, who are like they will give you the shirt off their back to help you out, but when it comes to their own home, to people
Hmm.
who they're supposed to love the most, they won't do anything for.
That is
And
that is exactly Rip Van Winkle. That is straight from the
yeah,
book. That is straight from
yeah,
the book.
I kind of sympathize with her.
So, like, yes, his wife is kind of awful, but she has a point.
Yeah, I feel like she probably became this way because she's exasperated.
Yeah.
Because like at that time, gender roles were so clearly defined. She has to do her own part,
Uh-huh.
and he has to do his.
Right,
She fails if he's not doing his part, especially.
Hmm.
right.
And I feel bad for her too because then she disappears and she has to raise the kids by herself.
Oh yeah,
And what happens to the farm and the animals and how does she make do? She's the real hero of this story.
yeah.
And
We need the inverted story where her husband disappears. We
Yeah,
need it from
Yeah,
her perspective.
we need the like Rashomon B story. Like,
Yes.
yeah. Honestly, it'd be kind of interesting. Like, what happens and what does she do? Is she relieved, but at the same time, like, it's tough. Like Washington Irving, write a sequel from the grave. What happens? You know? Hey, Charles Dickens can do it, so can Washington Irving. I'm doing that as a joke because somebody said Charles Dickens told them how to write the ending of one of his novels or something. It's kind of nuts. They're seance. But anyway, so I'm like, Charles Dickens did it, or Washington Irving, you could do it.
you just need to bury a quill and bury an ink bottle and
Yeah,
then
automatic writing.
right above his grave. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah.
Now, now I'm just imagining people planting all the writing supplies at his grave and coming back to find a little plant blooming and like papers coming out of the plant.
Okay, no joke, no joke. I've been dying to do a New England trip at some point, and I was looking at like Atlas Obscura sites to look at, and I found the cemetery where believe Washington Irving is buried, and
Wow.
yeah, there's other writers there too. I forget who else, but it is a thing at this gravesite to leave pens at these tombstones of the writers.
Huh.
So kind of is actually happening, except obviously there's no writing happening.
That's interesting.
Okay, so yeah, so it wasn't
Yeah,
far off from what we were saying. Like,
he's missing the paper. All his people are giving pens. Hello, what's he supposed to write on?
yeah, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
get him a journal.
Yeah.
If you go, you should leave a journal.
Yeah, leave a
I wonder
journal with
what people
no
would think if
exact.
they came by and found that.
I'm sure they'd start using it as a guest book or something.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah. But anyway, so that is funny enough as it ties into something I've been looking at personally. But yeah. Anyway, Rip Van Winkle is kind of like relatable, but at the same time, really, really frustrating. Um,
I,
Mm,
I'm kind of now having read both Rip Van Winkle and Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I feel like Washington Irving must like writing protagonists that aren't fully likable. They're a
mm,
lot more closer to a real human that you might know.
it's actually really difficult to write quote unquote real people
Uh-huh.
because people themselves are so geared to view things in black and white,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
very rarely can they view things in gray. And like to write, I will give it to him, like to write these characters that are relatable, somewhat likable, but also really annoying at the same time
Yeah.
is very talented.
It
So
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
props for him.
Yeah.
Even more rare that it becomes like a phenomenon and actually becomes popular.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a couple stories too that are like that. So again, good for him.
Yeah.
And I think Rip Van Winkle is very interesting in the sense of the story. Again, likable, unlikable character doing something we kind of all wish we could do, but at the same time, we've been there on the other side and we hate when people do that. And he kind of loses and wins at the same time. It's a very interesting story, but at the same time, nothing happens really. So yeah, I could kind of see why it's the least popular of the two.
I feel bad for saying this, but honestly, I don't even remember know if I remember how this thing ended. Like that's how like unmemorable this felt to me. Like how did this
Didn't you
end?
just watch this today?
I just watched it today and literally I don't even remember.
Disney version?
Yeah, like like I feel like well, this was just I was like this one went into my brain and out of the brain. Like the last thing I remember about this special was Rip Van Winkle. He woke up as an old man with a long beard and he was talking to the townspeople and he was like, "Oh my God, it's 20 years later. Where am I?" It's like that was the only thing. I'm like I can't
My wife died. Yay.
can't remember what happened after that.
Oh, he meets his children.
Yeah. Which he doesn't even, it takes him way too long to figure out that these are his kids because,
His kids don't recognize him. It's a townsperson that does.
yeah, I mean, he's 20 years older and 20 years later than they've seen him, and he has a giant beard, so it's kind of understandable that they wouldn't recognize him. But the fact that his son is also named Rip Van Winkle, and he's like standing right next to him, and it doesn't even register in his brain that this is his son after he has
That
just
yeah.
found out that his friends have died like 18 years ago, so he knows time has passed.
I guess if
Nice.
we really want to be fair, it does take time to process things.
Yeah,
Um, so
Right.
I've seen stupid up close personal. It takes a while. So I'll give him a pass, I guess. Especially he's older. His brain might be slower. I don't know.
yeah, that's true.
I think the biggest tragedy in this is that at first I was really worried about the dog. And I was like, oh no, where's the dog? And it's like, okay, he went home. Oh, he doesn't get his dog anymore. The dog gone.
Yeah.
Sad. And that's the tragedy. He doesn't get his best friend. But I mean, that's kind of lost in the story. Like, he doesn't have to deal with his wife, but he loses his friends and the companionship of his dog.
Hmm.
But he seems like kind of kind of a jerk, so he doesn't seem to care that much. I don't know.
In the book, he kind of rejoins society as kind of the town storyteller, and there's a line about him making more friends with people that are much younger than him than anyone that he maybe remembers. Like some of the oldest people in town, he slowly remembers, like, oh yeah, I knew you back way back when, but he prefers the company of the younger people, and he becomes the storyteller for the town.
And I guess it works for him because now he's too old to work. So
Yeah,
he gets to be the elder. He gets the benefits of being the elderly.
Yeah.
I have to wonder what his daughter thinks of this because he moves in with his daughter. So
Can I just say that the way she says, "You can move in with us," she sounds like she really doesn't want him to move in with her. Just say that. It sounds kind of clipped. And he's like,
Mm.
"Great."
Yeah. And he's of course too tone deaf to notice that she doesn't want it. So he's all
Yeah.
he's all for
Wow, I have great children
it.
that I missed their childhoods on. I didn't get to bond with them. Though
Right.
I guess that was parenthood at the time. So,
Oh yeah.
kind of.
yeah.
Well, we kind of skipped over it, but the biggest change
Oh,
that this one made from the book is the fact that the people that he meets in the mountains, they're not in the book, they're not dwarves. They're supposed to be the ghosts of Hendrik Hudson and his men. And the ghosts, like Hendrik Hudson was an explorer from like the 1500s, and I didn't really know much about him, but apparently he like explored this area of the Catskills Mountains and then he disappeared when he went towards the Arctic and nobody ever saw him again. So he's kind of wrapped up some history in this, saying that he's come back and now he lives in these mountains with the ghosts of his men. So, like, I'm not sure what the significance of the playing nine pins is, but that's in the book also. I just don't understand why they
I think it's
changed.
just though it sounds like bowling sounds.
Yeah, yeah,
Which can I just say, Twilight ended up stealing that. Um,
really?
yeah, well, they kind of in a way because except instead of nine pins or whatever, 10 pins, it's baseball. So when the vampires crack the bats hitting the balls, they do it so hard it sounds like thunder during the day. And I feel like I'm like this is the same vibe. Um,
I bet it was inspired. I've never seen Twilight or read the book, so I didn't know that, but
don't.
I bet it was inspired. Like that's too similar to be a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean it's not the same thing. But it's kind of close.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like they try to do it when a lightning storm is supposed to be going on, but it's still like when it's during the day, not raining, which I think was the point of why this was magical, I guess, because the nine pins they do it and it's the sound of thunder without rain or whatever, or without lightning. So it's like, oh, why does it sound like thunder? Also, interesting tidbit that I read off the wiki page. Washington Irving apparently was in England at the time he wrote Rip Van Winkle, and he had never been to the Catskill Mountain, though he ended up moving there later. And I'm like,
Hmm.
interesting that you chose to write about this place you hadn't been to before.
Maybe he was manifesting.
Yeah, I was just like, I want to move there. I want to sleep a long sleep.
Well, the other change in the same scene, but like the dwarves in this version, they're very loud, but in the book, the ghosts are like eerily silent,
Hmm.
except for the bowling. The bowling is what makes the noise, but like the whole thing is described as they're just very silent and stoic. And Rip Van Winkle takes note of the fact that they're doing something that's very fun, but they look so serious, and they just stare at him and like beckon him to come and play with them. So it's a completely different type of scene than what we get in this.
Huh. I feel like
Sounds
that
way,
would be creepier.
Yeah, definitely.
way more interesting than what they did. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because for the longest time I've had it in my head that these are giants because of the Wishbone version. Because like the
Oh,
the way they shoot those scenes with Wishbone, like a lot of times when Wishbone is playing a human character, they like kind of shoot on the level, like so it doesn't really look any different. But when they shot this particular scene, it's shot from like the dog's point of view, looking up at these people. So I've just always had it in my head that the ghosts were giants. So it's
uh,
like the opposite in this version. Now they're
hmm.
dwarfs.
indoors.
They had to make them seem magical, I guess, for somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand why they're dwarfs.
I guess it's because they didn't want to do traditional Dutch costume research dress, is my only guess as to why they decided to make them small instead. So it's like they could still look weird and off-putting without us doing the research.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's just such a weird, arbitrary change,
Yeah.
especially when they're trying to make like a spooky version. Like
Exactly.
there are ghosts in the story. That would help your spooky factor,
Yeah. Like weird.
But they have to be a little goofy at the same time.
I
That could be.
guess.
Like, I always do that with animated stuff. Like it's like, let's try to make this appeal to kids more.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. That could be.
What are kids appealed to? As an adult, I no longer have any idea.
I don't think television executives know either.
Which is kind of, it is kind of an interesting question poised to this kind of special. Like, it feels like it's meant for kids, but at the
Yeah.
same time, would kids like to watch this? And my answer is probably not.
I'm thinking, yeah, that's a good question because like most animated specials from the 70s are appealing to kids, but like this what about this seems like something that kids would like? It's like
But
I
then
don't
again,
even know.
kids like some really weird things. I really liked Moonwalker as a kid, and that was pretty weird. So, it's
Yeah.
maybe this appealed to some 70s kids, but I really can't imagine it appealing to kids today. I wouldn't recommend this, not because it's inappropriate, but just because I think kids would get bored.
Yeah, I think so too. I kind of
Yeah.
got bored. It was only because I was
Yeah.
making notes that I was able to focus.
Unfortunately, there wasn't any charm in this one.
Not really,
No.
no.
Even the spooky factor was kind of eh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they built on it a little bit more, maybe they didn't go off right off the gate with intensity. They paced it a bit more. It probably would be something, but it doesn't because it doesn't have the budget for that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I wouldn't recommend, but not because it's like horrific. It's just kind of okay.
That's the same way I felt about it. It's like, and the Sleepy Hollow one. It's like they're not terrible. They're just really, I just found them average.
Pretty much.
Like if you put a gun up to me, it was like, Jenna, should I watch this? Like, fine, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
But it's not. I wouldn't recommend
Is this good? Yes or no?
it. It's okay. Good. Yes. Okay. Fine. It's good.
Yeah.
But like the lowest tier of good.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. It's a C minus.
Right. I'm on Letterboxd, so I rate stuff all the time. This and that has a 5-star system. I gave this like two out of five.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's two. I assume two is passing, or is it like
To me, that's below average.
okay?
That's how I feel too. Below average, 2.5 is like the halfway mark, so that's passing. Like
Fair. You know what? I might say this is more of a D plus.
It's getting lower
Oh,
every minute.
I just inspired you to change the rating. Like, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm switching back forth between D plus and a C minus because according to Jonathan, it sounds like a mostly faithful adaptation of the book. And I do think there's value in faithful adaptations of books,
Yeah.
but at the same time, its sin is being boring.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me go back to D plus. But it could be worse. So then it goes back to C minus. It's like, but it could be better, D plus. So
Yeah.
I'm hopping between the two.
I'm always suspicious of whether this is right or wrong. I don't know, but I'm always suspicious of things that are faithfully adapted because usually, if you're going to tell a story for a book and tell a story for like a TV show or something, there should be differences because those are completely different mediums.
I mean, there are differences, but I'd argue the differences aren't very good. So maybe
Yeah.
D plus.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I'm gonna stick with D plus.
That sounds fair.
That sounds fair to me. I would probably like that's probably closest to what I would give it to.
Yeah, I don't know how it compares to other adaptations of the source material.
And also, I've never read the Sleepy Hollow book or Rip Van Winkle, so I don't know how it compares to the original either.
I feel like, if you really wanted a close adaptation of the book, this is probably okay.
Yeah, these get the gist of the story. They make some changes, and I would say the most egregious change is making the ghosts into dwarves for whatever reason. But like the gist of the story is there. So,
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure there are better versions. I haven't found them yet, but I haven't done a whole lot of Rip Van Winkle yet.
Yeah, I'll have to ask. Have you done any yet, Jonathan? Like, is this the first one?
This is the second one. I've done the
Okay.
Wishbone version.
So how does
And
it compare to the Wishbone version? Would you rate that one higher or this one?
oh yeah. I mean, the Wishbone version is a whole lot shorter because it's a
Well, I could
Wishbone
tell you're a
episode.
Wishbone fan, so you might be biased. I'm kidding.
I'm
I'm sure it's
I
better.
am biased, but
I,
I
I'm
feel
sure it
like
is better. You have reason to be biased.
it's more fun. This one
And it
is
has
just
a
kind of
dog in
boring.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the dog get a beard?
Yes. It's very
Oh,
Wonderful.
cute. I watched
Great.
this with Sarah, and Sarah was just exclaiming and squealing over how cute he was when he woke up from under a pile of leaves and had a giant beard.
Well, then it's winning so far. And
Yeah,
I imagine it'll probably win the whole thing.
yeah.
yeah, probably.
Yeah, you can't top that.
Everything would be improved with the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the Muppets.
Oh my gosh. I wish Muppets would do more like
Oh, me
classical
too.
literature adaptations. They're hilarious.
One of my
Yeah.
favorite Muppet things when I was a kid was Muppet Classic Theater, which is kind of obscure now. I don't even think it's on Disney Plus, but we had that on VHS and we watched it to death.
I think I heard of it. I would love to check it out.
What did you say was called Muppet Classic Theater?
Yeah, it was like four fairy tales done by Muppets.
Which fairy tales does it do?
The Elves and the Shoemaker, Three Little Pigs, King Midas. Let me look it up. Three Little Pigs, King Midas, Boy Who Cried Wolf,
I don't know.
Rumpelstiltskin, Emperor's New Clothes, and the Elves and the Shoemaker.
Oh, that's quite a
Ah,
lot.
Yeah, but they were all so funny. They was like peak Muppets to me. Because I love Muppets adapting things. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, this would be like Legend of Sleepy Hollow with Muppets. I bet it'd be the best version.
Oh, it
oh
would,
yeah.
definitely.
And
I would love to see a Jim Henson creature shop created headless horseman.
Mm,
yeah, oh my gosh, that'd be cool.
yeah.
Yeah. That Muppet Classic Theater, did that star like Kermit and Fozzie and everyone?
Yeah, like all the stories had different Muppets playing the main characters. Like King Midas was Kermit.
Ah,
The thing I remember most off the top of my head was that the elves and the shoemaker, the elves were Elvis.
Oh my gosh.
I think they
oh
sing Blue Suede Shoes also.
my.
And the three little
uh,
pigs were Miss Piggy and the two dumb pigs. I don't remember their names, but they were her brothers. And Miss Piggy
oh,
was the one who did the brick house because she was the smart one.
okay. I need to watch these. I haven't seen these.
All right, yeah, I'll have to put it on my list. thinking about it, I did not like the Wizard of Oz Muppets. But so I'm like, oh, I feel like that was a loss.
That one
But
was a little bit on the weaker side compared to the other Muppet movies. I agree.
they lost me when they brought in like biker gang stuff for the witches. I was like,
The
I'm
bike
out.
gang was the monkeys. The flying monkeys
Oh,
were a
whatever
biker
it
gang. They
was.
weren't
I
actually
was like,
monkeys.
yeah, I was like, I can't. Sorry. Uh,
Yeah.
I might care too much about the Wizard of Oz to enjoy this. Um, there's always a catch sometimes. But I don't care about Legend of Sleepy Hollow, so I'm fine with them doing something with here. Here.
They really should. Like, if Disney cared more about the Muppets, which they need to more, then they
Yeah.
totally could do that.
Well, I think we've probably talked about enough of these specials. We probably talked about them more than anybody has talked about them since 1970. So,
It might be like the first ever since like the TV critics from the 70s. Who knows?
If they reviewed it at all.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
who knows?
Does a tree make a sound if in the forest when it falls when no one's around to hear it? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we will be back at some point. We'll talk about at least one more animated version of Rip Van Winkle in the future. So until then, do you want to let people know where they can find you if they'd like more from you, Jenna?
Oh yeah, I'm still Sean Speak Phantomwise on YouTube as well as Love Gets of a Fairy Tale.
And Eli?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at eJunkie2014, and my blog is Entertainment Junkie Blog, and you can find me there at ejunkiblog.com.
Okay, well, we will probably see you soon to talk about another animated Rip Van Winkle.
All right.
All right, see you real soon.
Thanks for listening to Every Version Ever. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My Linktree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.